And we are live. Welcome to episode 22 of the Martial Art Masters Podcast. I am your host, Quantitative Jonathan Field. We have two guests currently on, waiting for a third one. So right now we have Quantitative Nick Zambri from Florida. We have Shihan, Larry Field from Texas, both multiple time world champion and world record holder. Welcome to the podcast, gentlemen.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
So, like I was just telling the guys before we logged on, and we're waiting for Keith Fanning from Ireland, but all of us are multiple-time world champion in breaking and world record holder. But what I want to do is, for the ones that necessarily don't know us yet, or brand new to the channel, or brand new to breaking, I would like to do a little bit of an intro. So, each person, we'll start with Nick. Can you briefly introduce yourself? Oh, I'm just gonna let Keith on here. Good morning, Keith. Or good afternoon for you.
Good morning or good
Morning, sorry for
afternoon.
the delay, guys. Mix
So
up
we
times.
just started. So like I said, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna kind of go around and introduce each other or ourselves, just to let everybody know who we are. And then I got some questions written out, and we'll just kind of cover a little bit of breaking, have some fun with it. But we'll start with Nick, then we'll go with Larry, and then Keith, and I'll finish up. But let's go around and briefly introduce yourself and your martial arts background, maybe a couple of your world titles or world records.
Okay, I guess if I'm first. Hi, I'm Nick Zambri. I've studied martial arts for 42 years this month. Um, I have done approximately 18 or 19 ISKA World Championships, and I have won two sidekick titles, and I had one or two previous world records that have been broke since. But I'm really glad to be here, and good morning, gentlemen.
Thanks for sharing, and now we'll move on to Shihan Larry.
Well, good morning. Master Fan, it's good to see you here. I'm glad that we can get across the ocean. Of course, we're all thinking about St. Patrick's Day in Ireland right now.
Yeah.
So I've got my office decorated for St. Patrick's. I'm Larry Fields. I have four world titles. The bulk of them come from ISKA. I've been going to ISKA tournaments since 1999, I think is when my first year was. Back then they didn't even have the dates on the belts, so how far back they go. I have several world titles for baseball bats, concrete sidekick, and two records for concrete elbow. So, I love breaking. It's a lot of fun, and I'm looking
Hey,
forward to the future of breaking.
excellent. Let's move on to Sifu Fanning.
Hi, guys. Great to see you all. Larry, haven't seen you in a while, so good to see you. Um, yeah, I was born into martial arts in 1976. Started officially training in 1980. I've been pretty much training ever since. Kung Fu background, a lot of kickboxing, a lot of Sanda kickboxing. I have dabbled in jiu-jitsu, MMA, a few bits and pieces. I like to learn. I have a passion for learning, so that's kind of where I go with that one. One thing that I think I started ISKA, US Open 2007. That's where I first met Larry and Nick. Kind of, I've done about 6 or 7 of those. Currently, I think 23 world records. Can't. There's a shelf full of stuff inside. Again, like Larry, I haven't kept track of everything, but there's a lot of stuff goes back a long way. But I think some of the best stuff I've done was actually being on stage with the likes of yourself, Jonathan, and holding for guys that kicked me in the chest after they broken a couple of baseball bats as well. So if anybody ever says those bats are fake, I can prove the bruises on my chest were real after he kicked that bat. So, but yeah, thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, great. And then anybody doesn't know me, I'm watching him judge the field. I've been competitive breaking since 2007. Well, I've been more like 2005. I started with the USBA, WBA, US Opens, and ISKA in 2007. That's actually where I first met Shihan Larry and watched him, Nick. Actually, Larry was the first breaker that I ever met in person. And he had the same first name as my father. I've been doing martial arts since the late 90s, been running my martial arts school since 2003. I've competed internationally from like 2007 to 2019. Then kind of had to take a couple years off because of the pandemic. Came back in like what 2022 for a few years. I have 12 world titles between the ISK and the UFBA, as well as competing a couple times in Kokoro Worlds as well. 12 world records. I actually hold a couple world records with Sifu Fanning as well as Nick Zambri. Like Larry Fields and I are going to have to do one together to round this out. But yeah, I think this is going to be a great podcast. There's a lot, for people that don't know, there's a lot of experience here. Like, what, like 70 or 80 world titles ish, insane amount of world record, so much knowledge, so many stories that we can share. We're probably going to end up doing several of these podcasts. I think it's really important for everybody to learn about our sport. We also have a comment. I'm going to put it on the screen here. I don't know if you guys can see it. We have Fernando Camarando. So he used to be on Team Vertical with Larry Field. And he's like, how many stars are in one place here? Well, 4, including him, that'd be 5. So thank you for
Right,
that.
yeah.
And again, anybody that's watching, if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the comments, and when I see them, I'll pop them on. But anyway, let's go with, like I said, several questions here. One of them is, what inspired each of you to start competing in breaking? So again, we'll start with Nick and kind of go around. So again, Nick, what inspired you to get into competitive breaking?
Well, the person that inspired me was Grandmaster Fred LaSala. I saw him with his daughter on TV doing an ISKA World Championship, and decided I wanted to do the same thing with my daughters, be on stage. But another reason, pragmatically, why I started competing is I was working for AMS, the management company, at the time, writing martial arts articles. And I really felt if I was a writer for a martial arts magazine, I really should be good at something competing wise. And I decided that breaking was the best thing for me, because I felt if you're going to tell martial artists things about their school and how to run their school, you also need to prove yourself to be a good martial artist as well. So I did that for the exposure in the community too.
Very nice.
Plus it's just fun. And what made it more fun was you guys and being yelled at by Larry at my first competition.
Oh, I think we
that was hilarious.
Point. So yeah, so Larry, I know you have an interesting backstory behind breaking as well.
Well, I originally started breaking in our dojo, and my instructor, he was. I came up for one of my belt tests, and he was like, "I want you to break this," and I did my breaking, and I really liked it. But later on, he noticed that I had an anger issue problem, and he said, "Anything different than I teach everybody else because of your anger." I had a lot of anger built up because of my dad, because he left when I was young. So he sat me down and he said, you need to do this, and this will help you with your anger. So that's how I got started in breaking. And when I started going to competitions in breaking, I realized that I was pretty good at it. And the other thing that I realized and I like the most is, with the power breaking, it's really, really hard for them to take it away from you, because it's power breaking. You count. You don't rely on the judge that likes your kata or likes your self-defense. You rely on what you do. You don't rely on a judge to see a point in fighting that he's not in a position to see. So that's what I enjoy about the breaking the most. I found a niche, and I just am trying to do the best I can with it.
And became probably one of the best breakers ever on the planet in the process. All right. So, Sifu fanning. Again, you also have a very deep root in breaking as well.
Well, yeah, like there's photographs of my first birthday, and we're sitting in my front garden, and all my dad's students are breaking around me at my actual first birthday party. So I was blowing out the candles on my my birthday cake, and the guys were breaking around me. So yeah, breaking has been a huge part of every single grade inside our grading system. So it wasn't until 2007, in around this time actually, March, April, my brother spotted a video of Drew Serrano doing an extreme um, creative routine. Sorry, and he sent me the video. He said, "You got to see these guys," and that led to me contacting Team Bergamo, asking could I come to the US Open. They gave me an invitation, and the rest is history as such. But it's been there's been a lot of stuff has happened over the years. As I said, I met Larry, Nick. I know we'll talk about it throughout the podcast, but great memories of different things that all you guys have done at US Opens that stuck in my head, that kind of way. So, like Larry, my dad, had anger issues with my dad. Although he was always in the picture, I still had a lot of anger issues with him. But he was my coach, he was my mentor, he was my master. So, he would piss me off a lot, and I'd always respond by breaking more than I ever thought I could break. So, maybe it was pointing me in the right direction.
Very nice. And I know I started breaking my product both martial arts. You have belt testings, and you have something taekwondo. You have to break boards. So I was pretty good at that. And then, I always had interest in breaking, but I saw on I guess it'd be more ESPN, but up here in Canada it was the Sports Network, and I literally saw my first ISKA World Championship on TV. It was literally Larry Field and Chip Townsend doing the creative breaking and power breaking, and that's kind of what caught my eye. And then I saw an ad in I think it was Black Belt magazine, well in high school, and I said to one of my friends, "Well, I can do that." He goes, "Why don't you?" And then so, 4 or 5 years later, yeah, I'm literally doing it. And another thing was, Century Martial Art had these, back VHS cassettes, and Larry Fields had a series on breaking. I bought those, cassettes, I watched them, and in the video, it said, "Hey, if you wanna call me, here's my number." So I called up Larry Fields and, talked to him, and kinda the rest is history, really. Yeah. All right. So now, okay. So we kind of covered that in question. I'm going to go with what are some of the most common mistakes beginner breakers make? So we've all at some point been a beginner in competitive breaking. So can we each like maybe chime in on one or two things that maybe either we made mistakes on or we see other breakers make when they first start, and maybe we can give them a little tips on that. So let's start with Larry this time.
Probably setup. I feel like the setup is so important, and I see so many times when I go do seminars that their setup is just not as precise as I like mine to be. It's a skill that a good breaker has a good setup. I guess the other thing that I see, and I hope I'm not stepping on anybody's toes by saying all this, but the other thing is ego. So many years, I mean, 1 year in particular, my first year, I set up. I went to the backstage and they said, "How many bricks do you need?" And I said 14. And they go, "You only know you can hit it one time." And I'm like, "Yes, I know that. I can break it." And I was kind of trying to be conservative with it and went out there, set up my 14 and blew them. And then behind me were getting more bricks so that they could win. And they weren't doing the same technique they were practicing in the back. They switched to my technique, which I could tell they had rarely ever done it, if ever done it. And, their egos got ahead of them, and I feel like we need to know what we're going to be able to break and, or have an idea and not just throw a giant number up there. which makes it really extremely hard when you're a good power breaker. When you think, oh, I can break 30, and you can't break 30. You can maybe break, 16 or 17. So I think that our egos and setups are probably the two things that I see where people make the biggest mistakes.
Yeah, I want to chime in on that one because, yeah, it also makes it unsafe. So I had a competitor at one of my tournaments years ago, and they literally decided to try a brand new technique on concrete for the first time ever, and they ended up breaking their arm because they weren't conditioned or they didn't have the technique properly, they didn't have the timing. So really, so I'm gonna say you have to know your techniques. You have to put in the time, put in the practice to learn the technique that's going to work best for you in whatever division that you're going to be competing in, and know the material. Like that's an important thing too. We all know if we go to well, we have four different areas: Canada, Ireland, Texas, and Florida. We all have different material. So the wood's relatively the same, except for Ireland, but the concrete we all know is different. I would say Florida, or actually, I would say Connecticut concrete, in my view, is probably one of the easier concrete. Ireland and Canada is probably a little bit harder stuff. Texas, I haven't experienced that, but you said that it's pretty similar. But yeah, know your material. Sifu Fanning, what's your take on that?
Well, I'd like to quick story. We 2008 or nine, we were at the US Open, and one of my guys came with a very big ego, and he asked, I think it was Chris Lee at the time. He said, "What's the record?" He said 16. 16 was the ISKA record. He said, "Well, I'm going to break 17." And I looked at him. I said, "You've never hit these before. You've never actually practiced this technique. You've never hit a stack that big." I don't care. I don't care. I'm positive. I can do it. I can do it. I think he broke 6, but it was the maybe it was the kick his ego needed too. But yeah, just echoing what Larry said, ego is a big thing. But there's a lot of I could talk a lot about it. There's a lot of technique out there that's different. Some people jump, some people don't jump, some people take 1 foot off the ground, and I always found that was kind of, it gave certain people a more of an advantage compared to, like, I don't jump. I don't know how to jump. I haven't got the timing for jumping. So for me, I always kept my feet solid on the ground. I've seen Larry's technique. I've seen, Nick's technique. I've seen everybody's techniques. Each works individually for each person. But it's when people try and copy what we're doing, but they've never practiced, that does lead to, I've always felt that when it comes to breaking, a lot of people are afraid to ask for help, afraid to ask for advice. I know I've stopped Larry in the hallway to ask advice. I've asked Drew Serrano, I've asked yourself. But it's not having that fear of asking the stupid question, if you know what I mean. So maybe that's what people need to try.
Yeah, exactly. How many times have just any of us have talked to each one of us? I talked to Larry, I talked to you, talked to Nick. We've all talked to each other and got little pieces of information and trade tips and whatever. Like, yeah, like don't be afraid to. All right, Master Zambri, you wanna?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the ego thing. I think it happens to all of us where I know at certain times I've thought I was better than I was, and then you realize that there's people out there that are so much better and so much more humble. But the biggest thing for me is I used to be way into doing crazy shock things on stage, dealing with sharp objects and things like that. And what I kind of learned was if your thing is really shocking, it takes away from a good break because people are are more apt to see the shock value and not see the skill. So I've learned to take out a lot of shock value thing. And another thing I also learned, just, and this was a big one, which I actually learned later, was like when you do a bed of nails and you throw your uniform and belt on the ground, a lot of people frown on that. And I never thought about it until someone was kind enough to say on Facebook how awful that looked. And from this point on, little details like handing my belt to somebody in my uniform top if I do a bed of nails to keep that element of class rather than the element of just being crazy, to refine it. Like Larry's crazy fun, not crazy shock value. There's a difference. You know what I'm saying? He's crazy intense. Master Fanning does some really unusual breaks that are intense, and shocking because they're good, not shocking because they're dangerous. You do things, Master Field, that's like springy and fun, and shocks people with the jump. Shock value should be based on skill, not on prop. So that's what I learned.
Yeah, that's a good thing. And I know you said this to me before years ago. Don't make your if you're gonna have to kind of stand or a prop, don't make the prop or the stand bigger than the actual break itself. Right?
Exactly.
I know a few breakers that have built elaborate stands and sets, I guess, but and they're enthusiastic, but it does take away from what they were doing, right? It becomes almost too showmanship, almost too pro wrestling, just to use that term. Fantastic. I would say as well as I'm gonna say another thing is setup, like Larry said earlier, like just knowing how to properly hang on to the board for each other safely. Because if you don't have proper holders, those materials are not gonna
Oh
break,
God.
or it puts the holder in a very dangerous situation. We've had, again, at one of my tournaments, we had a competitor that was going to hold a baseball bat for another competitor, and fanning go like this one, they put their head behind the baseball bat. Well, if I kicked that bat, I would have knocked the guy out, or probably drove the baseball bat through his skull. Like, you gotta use people gotta use common sense. Like, imagine how you gotta realize how hard we're hitting and how much power is being generated on the back end of the material. Like we gotta make sure everybody's safe. Okay, here's another cool question. What's the most difficult type of break you have ever attempted, and how did you approach figuring this break out? So let's start with we'll start with Larry on this one. So the most difficult break that you've attempted, and yeah.
Well, my original instructor would take a cinder block that we used to hold things up with, and we were at a belt test, and he was kind of leaning on it, picked it up, and put it on top of where we were going to break bricks, and it was sitting there, and he was talking and talking, and he got done, and he was talking about conditioning, and then he took and did a hand pseudo through that brick all the way through. That's probably one of the coolest breaks that I've ever seen. Now, I do break bricks with my elbows like that, with my elbows and my feet, but to the ability to hand pseudo it, I have not gotten to that. And I've tried. I've tried and failed. A lot of times I'll get through part of it, but not the whole thing like he did. But he was tremendous fast, probably one of the fastest people that I've ever been around. And what's crazy is after he passed away and I started going to more tournaments, I realized how fast he was compared to everybody else that I was competing against or sparring against or whatever. That's probably one of the coolest breaks that I've ever seen done. Coolest break that I've ever done. Everybody likes my backflip break where I backflip and do the Y kick and break in the Y, both sides of me. But probably the one that I think personally mine is the coolest is probably the power elbow. I like it the best. It's probably my favorite. And while we're talking about that,
yeah. Let's go move on to Sifu Fanning.
You know my break. You know my break. Like, I think one of the ones I took the most pride in was the block on his side.
Uh-huh.
The one finger break through a block in London. There's been so many. The one thing, and again, I suppose one thing I meant to sit down with Larry a long time ago and talk about, because you gave me some great advice after one of my creative routines, and we were supposed to meet up later that day, and you were going to give me some advice, and I always said I missed opportunity to get the advice that you were going to give me for my creative, because you spotted that day that my creative routine was quite creative, and there was a lot of the ability was there. I just didn't put it together correctly. So for me, the really unusual breaks that I do, the block on its edge, the one finger break, block in midair, all these type of things that I do, they're speed max with conditioning. So that to me is something I love doing. I always have this thing where no matter what tournament I go to, I want to leave that tournament with people remembering one of my breaks, whether it be my arm palm shot, my block on the edge, whatever. So that's kind of where I go. I love to go back to that shock factor. I love to show people the extremes I can push my conditioning and my breaking to. You've trained with me, Jonathan, long enough that I see it. It comes to me like the block on its edge came to me in a dream. One of the midair blocks breaking in midair, that was another dream. They were given to me, and I always believed that my past masters were the ones that visited me in my dreams and gave me these. People are going to think I'm mad, but I didn't invent this stuff. It came to me in a dream. It challenged me. I tried it. It didn't always work, but when I did finally get it, it became a party piece then. So that's kind of.
I think we're all quite spiritual in our own ways on here. So to believe that maybe some higher calling or the universe or God or something speaking up to us, that very well could be true. I don't think that's bad at all. Master Zambri, so what's one of the harder breaks that you attempted?
It's been a little while since I've done anything really unique. My favorite one from years back was being picked up in a split to do a hammer fist. That was probably one of my favorites. And some of my early stuff that wasn't really smart was doing like a jumping back swing kick through like a large terracotta pot, which I wouldn't suggest, but that was unique. So it's been a little bit. I've been going much more for consistency now because I'm not as springy as I used to be. So some of the older breaks were a little more creative.
Yeah, for myself, I'm definitely probably one of the smallest competitors in creative breaking and power breaking, or competitive in all in general. Everybody knows that. Like, most of the time I'm walking at 140, 145 when I'm competing. So I have to rely more on my speed, but probably it is outside of competition. And if well, you guys all know about how powerful my ticks are, or how fast I tick. I did 10 unspaced boards in our ticking machine here. I never had to do it in competition because the numbers just weren't. Every time I competed, the numbers just weren't at that number. But yeah, to be able to do like 10 unspaced boards, like that's 10 inches of just solid wood. And I actually have to thank my father for that one because my dad was the one that we literally probably about 2.5 years. Every single day we were down at the Dojang or at the academy practicing power kicking like every day. Even like Christmas morning we would get up, do the whole Christmas thing, come down, do some breaking, go back home, finish up Christmas. But yeah, the consistency is really important in what we do. Another cool question I have. Can everybody share the most memorable or proudest record they've set, or even a championship that they won? So, what's that one moment that stands out in your mind, whether it's a world record or whether it's a championship that maybe stands out above the rest? I'll start with Sifu fan.
So I'm nearly certain it was the North American 2018. It was in Connecticut anyway, and everything I hit that day broke. So but like it was one of those days where I had 100% success rate. There was no material left unbroken. It was one of those competitions where I owe that a lot that day to Master Ron Sullivan, who the day before had taken me into his school to help me practice my setup and get my heights correct. Because that's always one thing that I have a disadvantage to. When I go to America, materials different sizes. The setup is a different height. So I know where I like to break. I know what height I like to break at. I know where I can generate the most power. So he let me go to a school the day before. We practiced a few different setups. He gave me about 50, 60 blocks just to play with and get some practice. And then on the day of the competition, the next day on the day of the competition, everything just came together. It was the only thing I came second that day was stomped to John Zursk, he was going for a record. I think he was going for 17 or 18. So he actually beat me on the stump. But otherwise, there was nothing I couldn't break that day.
For sure. Yeah, no, your pranks are always insane. Let's go Master Zambri.
Gosh, there's been a lot. My favorite one for myself was I did a record for stomps. I think I did like 236 cap heads in a minute with a stomp. That was probably my favorite record. And I kept that for a little while. And that to me was a pretty fun accomplishment.
Yeah, no, that was a really good one. I know. I remember watching the guy that beat the record afterward. It was really
And
cool.
I absolutely love that one when the
I
record was
think
beat.
that stack that wasn't gonna break. I'm like, I said to one of my students, see that one stack? That's the only stack that's not gonna break. And sure enough, that was the only stack. I'm like, oh my god, that was a weird day. But go ahead, Shihan Larry.
Well, I guess probably the one that I enjoyed the most, that was the most fun, when I went up to Connecticut to the Mohican Sun, and I did the 10-second speed break on concrete, and Raphael Raffy was there cheering on right there with me, and I asked him, "Hey, will you please go down with me and just keep telling me to break?" And I had set a record earlier that day with concrete hand, but to be in that environment, that ring environment where MMA is going on and then we're breaking, that was probably one of the coolest records that I had. And I think about like my baseball bat record, how competition wise that was, because the record needs to be the same materials, and I was using 32 Louisville Sluggers, and everybody else should have been doing that too. But that baseball bout record, that was one of the earlier ones that I really enjoyed. But the Mohican Sun was probably my favorite.
For sure. I know I've done quite a few myself. Probably my favorite world record. Well, I think one of the ones that a lot of people look up to is when I did 30 board in like 19.1 seconds with spear fingers. Like that's a legitimate, like that's one that's very similar to what Fanning does with a lot of his breaks. So not so much power based, but even though it does take a lot of power, but people don't realize like when you're doing like finger breaks, and I had the aha moment a few years back. It's all about the forearm strength. There's no muscle in the fingers. It's all in your forearm. So the stronger you get your forearms and wrist, the finger breaks become really easy. I just remember doing that particular record and then having everybody. It was at the hall at one of the Hall of Fame UFBA Hall of Fame ceremony tournament, and that was the year that they did a tribute to Grandmaster Elton Trower. So maybe that's where I got the idea. But yeah, I remember afterwards, Drew Toronto, he was talking to the audience on the phone while on the microphone while Adam was counting the board, and Drew picked up my hand and he showed everybody the finger because all the skin had peeled off the one finger, and he goes, "That's for real," and like I'm like, "Yep, that's for real, for sure." Next question. So, I definitely have a good story behind this one, so I'm gonna go first. But, um, have you ever failed at a big break attempt, and how did you bounce back from it? So something that you thought that you thought you were gonna nail and you failed. Me, I have a double story on this with Nick and Larry. You guys probably remember this is what 2014, 2015 ish when Larry dropped down to lightweight. And that's the year that had the ISK actually had 2 rounds of breaking. So the two top competitors had to go on for a second round for the championship. Now, I had won the first round in three directional against Larry by one board, and I had won the power concrete kicking against Larry and Nick, because they tied, so we ended up having to go the second round. So then when I get the second round three directional, I ended up losing to Larry by one board. And I do blame the holders on that one. That sounds bad, but like we said earlier, there is definitely a holder that can play a factor. But then also, within the power of concrete, and Larry commented last time we were on the podcast together, when I hit the concrete, the first couple just exploded instead of transferring all the power. So I literally went into two divisions and in first place and ended up losing both of them to some of my best friends though. So it is what it is. So you guys both got the championships that year. Um, but yeah, no, and then so I just took that as a learning lesson that, definitely really double check on the holder. And then as far as power concrete ticking, a little bit more emphasis on the speed and not so much on the power. So that I also realized that like when you're putting up the concrete, you always want the lighter concrete to be at the back of the stack or the bottom of the stack. So when you hit them, it doesn't explode and absorb all your power. Let's go with Master Zambri next. So what was a break that you did that maybe didn't go your way?
Oh gosh, a lot of them over the years. Um, One time when I was doing creative, there was like I would do a double jump stomp and fell right, broke it and then fell right off the stack, like I had to do a back fall. That didn't go well. And one time I did a pickaxe, didn't go real high and popped my hamstring right on stage. So those two definitely stick out.
I think we've all done that one for sure. Sifu Fanning.
It wasn't just one break; it was my whole creative routine. The last time I was out with you, it's just whatever happened on the day. We had a springy floor, we had matted floor, and I decided to put a creative routine based on internal breaking, and it just didn't work out on the day. I went away. I done it again on a concrete floor, and I smashed it. But it didn't deter me. I remember saying that was a lesson learned. We were on a sprung floor, we were on a matted area, and I was trying to do breaks that I shouldn't have tried to do. I should have altered the routine. I didn't, but hey, it happens.
Oh yeah, that was me in 2019. But I'll get into that one. So Shihan Larry.
Well, I guess probably my biggest failure was when I was coming back from COVID. So in October, and U.S. Open's in July. So in October, I get out of the hospital from COVID, where they took part of my lung, and I went from about 235 pounds to I think I was like 170 pounds when I came out of the hospital, and I was in a bed for 3 months. That I was when I got out of the hospital. It was like, you need to go into a nursing home. You need to, they gave me all these things. And in my head, I said, no, I'm going to go to the U.S. Open and I'm going to win it this year. That's the thing that made me want to go and compete again. It made me want to get better, be healthier again. So come up to the U.S. Open, and I had won the power concrete elbow. I had won 3 directional, and I got second place in power concrete sidekick. So I felt really good. And my creative routine, I had elected to try to do something different because I wanted to use all materials that were there at the tournament site. And just like Nick, I did a double jump stomp, busted my butt. I'm sitting on the ground going, really? This is really what you're going to do today? So I got up, brushed myself off, and finished my routine. But it was probably one of the worst breaking routines that I've ever done for creative. It was like I would hit stuff that I normally would break, and it wouldn't break. The only break that I did well at that event was I had set up but a good buddy of mine, Jeff Brown, used to do. He would set up the bricks and he would break just one brick. And I had been kind of practicing that. and it worked. It worked really well, but I used so much key on that one break because it was almost at the very beginning that I had nothing left. No, that kind of key that you need for all the other breaks. So my mistake was putting that break up first, but I probably wouldn't have been able to do it if it had been further in the routine. And it was a nightmare. I mean, it was like I hit stuff and it didn't break, and I'm like, I know I can break this, but it wouldn't break. So, and there's, I have to admit, there's nights that I wake up in the middle of the night and still that routine is on my mind. So.
I had a very similar story in 2019. Well, so for about 4 years, from like 2014 to 2018, I was getting I got third, fourth, third, second. So I got second place in 2018. So I'm like, I gotta get first in 2019. I was gun ho. I had a good routine, and all the other competitors weren't doing all that great. Everybody was just having a bad day in 2019, or just wasn't going. And Drew's like, you can win this. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to. I have a routine. I know I had a really good routine. And for the love of God, all the breaks that I thought were going to be hard were easy. All the ones I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to blast through this were hard. The stuff that I had no problem the year before, I'm like, really? So I ended up not winning that year. But that was a horrible one too. But then I came back after COVID at the Kokoro World Championship at the IMAF, the International Martial Arts Festival, and I did some of my best routines in 2022, 2023, even getting the 2024 U.S. Open third place for the UFBA World, but at the same time didn't win any of them. I got second and third. What we mentioned earlier about power breaking, either you did it or you didn't. Nobody can take that away from you, like Larry said earlier. However, creative breaking is a lot of times it's better to judge, or the judges just happen to like your style of breaking. So actually, I have other questions, but I kind of want to get into that a little bit because all four of us have different ways of breaking. We all are very unique in our breaking style. I would say I'm like a North American slash Korean breaker. Sifu is definitely the Chinese style breaker, not Nigerian kung fu. I would say Master Zambri, you're more of a typical North American breaker. But I would say same thing with Larry. You're a little more of a North American style breaker, but maybe a little more fun in the way you approach things. So maybe let's have a little bit of discussion on that. On what do we all think judges are not seeing in some of our breaks? What are judges not understanding? Let's start with Fanning, because I think you have some of the most unique breaks, but sometimes people don't understand what you're doing.
Well, I go back to 2015. You were judging my creative routine for the USBA at the Open, and my team didn't show up to help set up. So the setup was quite slow. So the routine time was cut down really short. And I had some really complex breaks. And I think because I rushed it, and I had to rush it to get the time, so I didn't get penalized. And then I remember setting up the last break, and it was the one finger break. And I heard the girl go, "You've got 10 seconds left." I thought, oh shit, that's it. It's finished. There's no point in even doing this now. But it was a lot of time when it comes to creative routines, especially when you're doing some of the more specialized breaks. If the judge doesn't understand the complexity of the break, if he doesn't understand how hard that break actually is, it's like people see, you do a chop through 3 blocks, spaced. They understand that. They've seen it before. They know it's a hard break. But when they see you do a palm shot through 5, they kind of go, yeah, well, we've seen 5 done before, but they didn't see the way I did the palm. So they just class it as a palm break as opposed to an arm palm break. So for me, some of the specialized breaks that I do and I have done, they kind of get lost in what's going on. And I find that I was never a sore loser. I love seeing people win. I love helping people. So that's one thing I loved about the competitive breaking scene was when you're standing. I did my routine, and the very next minute, like I'm helping somebody hold boards, I'm holding it back for somebody. So I love that idea. But when you're getting beaten by a guy hasn't done the quality of breaks you've done, but the judges understood his breaks more. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely experienced that myself for sure. Grandmaster Zambri?
So the question was about what did the judges miss sometimes?
Yeah, like what? Are you doing stuff
Well,
that are
I
missing
think
or?
um, I think sometimes it's not clear what they're really looking for. I don't even know it's so much that they miss. I'm a management by objectives type of person, so if I know what they're looking for, I can try to fit my routine a little better.
Mhm.
So I think the biggest thing is knowing what they value. Like percentage what, like one of the things I try to do in my routine is I try to miss nothing at this point, but I don't know if they would rather have bigger stacks, even if I miss something. So it kind of, and how much do they value kicking as opposed to upper body? Because the people on the judging panel I really respect, but the thing is, if I don't know what you want, it's very hard for me to meet what you're looking for.
For sure. And then Shihan Larry?
Well, I agree with Nick. It's a lot of times it's just throw it up in the air and see what happens. But the judges sometimes we're blessed to have good judges, but
Mhm.
the variety, and then sometimes we see guys make misses and we're like, did they not see that? That was a miss.
Right.
You
Yep,
know,
yep,
did
yep.
they see that? Why didn't they see that? And I think that's, and I know they're sitting down uh, and we're up on the stage, or even when they were even with us, I just see that it's hard to be a judge. I've been on both sides of it, and it's hard to sit there and judge, and I know what I'm looking for, but the guy next to me judging, he's looking for something different. So I like the way the USBA has come up with their curriculum for breaking, to
Mhm.
where it's kind of standardized. Um, I think that the other thing is it's great to have variety of materials, but a lot of times, certain materials are easier to break but look fantastic when you break them. You know,
Mhm.
and it's a knife edge because then it's a great material to break, and then you miss, and the judge gives you a higher score because you attempted it when you should have made that break. So it's, as a judge, I can see how hard it is, but in the same respect as a competitor, I want them to be dead on, and sometimes they just miss stuff. I mean, it just or
Yep,
they opinion
yep.
of the variety that it needs to be.
Yeah, so those are all very valid points, and I've been in the same boat where I've had less misses than another competitor, but they were scored higher. It's like, how? Like, what were you looking at? Did they miss? Like, did they just actually did not see what was going on? Or sometimes, and then, I mean, well, and it's like any sport that has subjectable scoring or judging, there's always going to be some biases, whether it's intentional or unintentional. Sometimes we have unintentional. We all just favor certain break, right? I think one of the best days of judging I've had was it was Grandmaster Zambri, myself, and Bill Hardwick. We were judging a bunch of creative breaking, and we were always, and with the USBA scoring criteria, minimum score was like 15, maximum 55. Each category had a little criteria, right? Importance, whatever. And between Nick, Bill, and I, we were always either dead on, the exact same score, or by one off from each other. I'm like, that was the perfect, most fairest judging team I've experienced, at least from me being a judge. Like that, but that doesn't happen very often. Sometimes, you have a judge that's extremely hard. Some are very down the middle. Some are very easy. That can vary as well. And you brought up material. I know most of us, we just go to Home Depot or Lowe's and we buy the material. We go to the sports store, grab the baseball bat, and we break them. Some competitors have been known to doctor material. We don't have to mention any name, but we definitely know a few that have had substandard material sometimes. And
Mhm.
again, with a variety of material, yeah, sometimes some material is just naturally easier to break, but it looks good. But isn't that part of the creative breaking thing, right? Not all power based. Obviously, we're there to show our power, but creativity is also a big factor as well. So
Mhm.
sometimes you need to have a little bit less power in the material, but the break itself is more challenging, whether it be like an aerial kick, a backflip, a spin kick, where you can adjust your finger, whatever it might be. So should the criteria obviously change a little bit based on the material as well? Anybody want to chime in on that?
Well, I think personally, for me, traveling all the way to the States, I don't have much option because I don't know what the material is and I don't know where to get it. So, I spent a full day in Toronto driving around from Home Depot to Lowe's to different hardware stores to try and find material. Um, I have had situations where I've made judges aware of material that was substandard that was being loaded into a tournament, and I felt very one particular year I felt very cheated because I'd spent a lot of money to be there, and I lost quite a lot that day to substandard material. But it was allowed go ahead, and as I said to you, it just felt if there was a standardized, if we all so for instance, if we all show up at a tournament and the blocks are already there, the material's already there. You ring the organizer and say, I want 2 baseball bats, I want 30 blocks, I want 20 scallops, and the organizer supplies those. Well, now we know the standard of the material.
Mhm.
Whereas if I go out to the trunk of my car and I take out 15 scallops and I take out 2 baseball bats that look a little bit suspect, but you're taking me at face value. So
For
so
sure.
there's a lot
Now,
of stuff there that you know.
now you bringing up baseball bats. I want to bring this up. So obviously, most breakers, a lot of breakers will break Louisville sluggers. We all know that. Now, but you also have the Louisville sluggers that are Funko bat. They're a little bit longer, so it should be a little bit easier to break. As well as I actually favor up here because they're just a little bit cheaper are the rolling bat, which are still Major League Baseball bat. So I'm gonna ask Larry on this one. So what do you think? Like, do you really think there should be a huge scoring difference between standard Louisville Slugger and standard rolling bat? But then at the same time, if somebody's using uh uh a Louisville Slugger, but they're doing it with a fungal bat, which is 3 or 4 inches longer, should that be scored differently as well?
It should be, and I was just thinking about this, and I saw that Fernando had put up there, Grandmaster Elton Trowler. A lot of his materials, people didn't realize how hard his materials were. Um, my student Wayne Hinkle, who is actually making brisket for our tournament next weekend, my tournament here in Abilene, but Wayne held a brick like this for him, and he broke it with his fingers, and Wayne said that brick was a brick, Larry. And I was like, I know they say his stuff's not real, but it is. Back to the baseball bats, I've broken Louisville sluggers, and I think that if it's a world record, we need to have everybody using the same material so that the people coming behind them, it's the same. Like you said, those fungo bats are a little easier to break. I love like for demos and stuff, I'll go find some rolling bats because when I hit them, I don't know why, but when I hit them, they just explode. But like when I hit a Louisville slugger bat, they just break, you know. But the Rollins bats, they explode. And I don't know what the difference is in them is, but I love breaking rolling bats for demos. Now, for a record or something, it needs to be a standard to where they have a good track record on their bats. But back to what Sifu Fannin was saying, it would be good that if we showed up at the tournament, you make your order. I want these many bats, these many. And there's a company now that's coming out, which I'm excited about. They have their breakers like we are, and their whole thing is they want to standardize materials, and I agree with them. And they make bricks. They are a professional brick making company. They make bricks to build houses with, and they're standardizing their bricks. So there's a competition up there. They're 24 inches long. That gets me going. They're 4 inches wide and 2 inches thick. So they're a lot like what we used to break with the scallops. And these are telling us that they can get bricks over to you, Sifu Fallon, and they are going to be able to get bricks everywhere in the United States through railheads. That's what they're telling me right now. So I'm going to go up to their competition and try these bricks out and see what they're like. But yeah, I think they should standardize materials for creative breaking that you order pre-hints so you know what they are.
Yeah, that is the beauty of power breaking, right? That whenever we go to whatever competition, it's the standard material. Now, obviously, when you go to Europe, it's a little bit different. Come up to Canada, it's a little bit different. But yeah, in general, power breaking, it's the same material for every single competitor. That's the beauty of power versus creative. It can be a little sticky sometimes. Any thoughts on that, Grandmaster Zambri?
One more time, sir. I couldn't hear.
We were just talking about like we're just talking about the material with breaking, or even like just the baseball bat differences or whatever. You know what? I got
So
one
we were
last.
talking about standardized materials.
Yep.
Yeah, standardized materials would be really good. Like when we do competitions and qualifiers to have absolute number, as opposed to guessing on the materials, especially like Larry was saying, like with bats and bricks. I think we have a good absolute material with the boards, because with the boards we have we get them from breakingboards.com, and they're pretty consistent. But I think things like bats and stuff, it would be nice to have a standard.
Yeah. So I got one last question. I want to respect everybody's time, and we all got to do stuff here on Sunday. So the last question I want to talk about real quick. And then also I want you to mention somebody else besides anybody that's on this podcast right now. I think we've talked our own words enough. But what's the most insane breaking record or break you've seen someone else do? So whether it's a break or a record, somebody that's not on this podcast. Something else you see somebody else do. Let's start with again Sifu Fanning.
There's a lot of people we could mention here because we go back to when I first started competitive breaking with you guys. We had Fernando, we had Raphael, we had
Right.
Ron Sullivan. We had some really big numbers, really big guys. Like Raphael was a lightweight, but man, he was hitting heavyweight numbers. Like he was phenomenal breaker.
Yeah, much bigger than me.
Sorry?
Yeah, he's not much bigger than I am.
No, exactly. Yeah. So we go back as far as Mitt Lennox, God rest him. But some phenomenal. He was the trickster. He was the magician. We had even the likes of John Harwick. There's a lot of people. We could name a lot of people who've been and gone. So for me, some of the big numbers, I remember hitting a stack of 13 and I broke 12. And I thought, yeah, I'm in with a good chance. And for that moment, I was in first place. Then somebody else came out. Then Larry came out. Then Ron Sullivan came out. And it seemed to be a championship between Ron and Larry, where, he was going to hit the biggest numbers. And everybody was kind of watching then. All of a sudden, I went from first place down to fifth place, because all these guys were hitting, huge numbers. Drew Serrano, again, all these guys hitting 14, 15, 16, and you're kind of going, well, where does it finish? Where does it end? And at this stage, we're all on stage. So the stage is actually bouncing as we're hitting. So again, there's so many pivotal moments that stand out. Like I was there the day Nick tore his hamstring doing the axe kick. I was there when you were kicking through a panel door. Larry getting shot at with a bow and arrow. These were all things that kind of stood out at the time to me, kind of going, how can I take this and adapt it and show people in Europe, how these guys are doing it without letting them think it's fake. Because everybody thinks, oh, it's fake. It must be fake. Take out the spaces. It's so much harder. Take away this, take away that. Boards don't hit back. We get all that bullshit. That's another story. But trying to take what I seen you guys do and say, look, this is real, guys. Stand and hold for these guys. Stand on the stage and feel Larry Field's elbow vibrate through your feet. And I'm not just saying that to blow smoke. I'm being honest here. But when you've got people who we haven't even mentioned the likes of Clinton Murphy, we haven't mentioned some of the other guys, Alan Stackloff, all these guys who've been at the heights of creative and at the heights of competitive breaking, that are no longer competitive breaking, but they are coaching, and now their students are rising up. And I remember being there in Team Abilene. There was maybe 20 guys all there wearing the same uniform. It was quite impressive. It was actually scary too. But and then Team Chip, obviously, and all these people. And I think one of the guys who stood out the most at the time, I'm going back to 2007, maybe 2008, was Steve Fisher. Steve Fisher looked like the guy from Karate Kid. Remember your man Dutch? He had the cut off sleeves and the same haircut. And Steve Fisher was a force to be reckoned with at the time. So yeah, so that's my kind of 2 cents.
Yeah. Master Zambri.
So records that have been done by other people. There's so much cool stuff out there. To be honest, the records I remember the most are y'all's. So the one that comes to mind, because I just loved what he did, was when Ken Goodrich hit like 498 slabs of concrete with a stomp by having a great setup and a really well thought record. That was one of my favorites because it beat mine and doubled the number. I love to see people bring the sport to the next level, and I thought that was a great example. And I've seen some team records from y'all that have been amazing. I've enjoyed Mike Reeves' records, with the 400 boards, I believe. And one of my personal favorites was Larry's, when he did all the ones with the forearm. There's so many good records out there, but truthfully, I remember y'all's the most.
And then Shihan Larry.
Well, when you talk about records and phenomenal breaks, Mitt Lennox, the stuff he did was just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Trowler, the Coke can that he did, on John Zurich, him doing the trampoline and blowing, and for a big guy, because for many years he and I just were battling each other out for a win, and Ronnie Sullivan, just a beast breaker. I mean, these guys that are coming from England and Germany and all these different places, getting to compete against them is an honor, because they're the best at what they do, and we get to compete against each other. That's probably the competition part of it is what I enjoy the most.
For sure, and I think I'll finish this off by saying, again, Nick Zambri has incredible world record stopping. Sifu Fanning with his cheap break, or he calls them cavity break world records that he's done lately. Larry Fields was like the baseball bat with the shin kick and elbow baseball bat breaks. I'm just gonna go on one more bat break we haven't mentioned him yet today. Chip Houston with his double bat break being held this way, or triple bat break and the 4 baseball bat breaks. Chip is probably one of the hardest kickers on the planet, and anybody's ever held for him I have, or somebody that's ever scarred him, I have, and he's a hard thinker, like one of the hardest thinkers. So yeah, we get a chance to we are blessed to interact with people that are pushing the human body to the absolute limit. We are literally, as well as us, we're becoming superhuman in some of the feats that we're doing. I don't mean that in a showboat way or that we're like Superman or something, but we are doing some real phenomenal things. But at the same time, it all started up in the mind. It was our mind that helped our body get to where we are. So this was a fantastic hour, well, more like an hour and 15 minutes. I would definitely want to do it again with you guys soon, maybe in a couple months. Chat a little bit more about some other elements of ranking and funny questions here. But again, I just want to thank all of you guys for popping on today. Thank you for everybody that was listening and commenting, and I hope that this will help some of the current breakers, some of the future breakers, and maybe inspire some other people just even if not breaking, but just to go out there and try something that's challenging to them and succeeding.
Thank you very much, guys.
It's good seeing all you.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Fantastic, guys.
Yep. Have a great day, gentlemen.
Thank you
Take
very
care.
much.
Thank you.